to accept our position, but that we listen with respect and openness to his or her position too, and be prepared perhaps to be changed by the encounter.
Indeed. Now you've written extensively on extremism, both the religious variety, Judaic, Christian, Islamic and others, and also the non-religious, the extremity of atheism also, you see. And you've also brought out that this is nothing really new in history. It has happened a number of times and then it has gone away. How do you see the current wave ebbing of extremism and violence?
Extremism and violence are largely a product of fear. Every single extremist movement that I've studied in Judaism, Christianity and Islam is rooted in a profound fear of annihilation, and there's much to be afraid of in our world. Right here in Pakistan, here you are sort of with the war in Afghanistan at your very doorstep. You have, you're being assaulted every day by extremist suicide bombs, almost that there's, and this is a climate in which people want to cling to certainty or of some kind, and can, in their fear, become afraid. When we feel our backs are to the wall, that's when we often lash out violently. And the way this world is structured at the moment, there's so much inequity, there's so much power vested in so few people, with so few people. People feel helpless and despairing that the ordinary political processes will work for them. And very often that fear too hardens into rage, ungovernable rage. But we need somehow to listen to two extremists carefully, not just dismiss them, because they are expressing fears and anxieties that no society can safely ignore.
But do you feel that is happening?
No. I think there is a realization, however, that we cannot continue as we are. I was in the United States just a couple of weeks ago, where they had that shooting of the Congresswoman. And people were coming in hundreds to the lectures about compassion, saying that we need to move on from this. What had led up to this was a lot of violent speech, a lot of violent political talk, threats, smear, and it's tearing the society apart. And I think this kind of division of society between so-called liberals on one side and so-called extremists on the other is quite common. But it is dangerous, because in a volatile world as we are, this kind of polarization, we simply can't afford it.
No, it will tear us apart.
It will tear us apart. And we are all bound up with one another.
Absolutely.
What happens here in Pakistan has ramifications for the entire world, just as many of the Western countries have been implicated in what has happened here in the subcontinent. Over with our colonialism and then later in Western imperialism.
But now the world is becoming one common. Technological growth is bringing us all together, internet
and that has been a problem for some people, because we are bound together more closely than ever before, as you say, electronically, but also economically. When one market goes down, all stocks plummet throughout the globe. And what happens in Afghanistan today could have repercussions in New York or London tomorrow.
And then the environment.
And the environment. We are share the same environmental predicament. And yet our perceptions haven't caught up with the fact that we need to bring our perceptions and our behaviour up in line with this reality, that whether we like it or not, we are interconnected. Our fate is bound up with one another. So we've got to get along.
The diagnosis is there. What's the solution?
Well, solution is practice and activism. The Charter for Compassion that we are launching here in Pakistan is not about us all falling into each other's arms and promising to be compassionate from this day forward, but finding some actually practical thing that you can do in your work environment, in your profession, in your family, in your country. If you're in the media, for example, how do you give people accurate information about other people, not slanted or biased by a particular viewpoint? How can you create, there's doing a lot of work in Pakistan about business. How can we create a more human form of business where people become better human beings?
This would certainly help, and it'll go a long way, no doubt about it. But I wonder, will it be enough? So long as we keep thinking in nationalistic terms, you see, unless we develop an international mentality, unless we accept that there is one human brotherhood, we are dealing with fellow men.
And this is essential to us. It's essential too in the religions, to come back to where we began. They all say you cannot confine this compassionate responsibility to your own group.
Absolutely.
You must reach out to the stranger, as it says in the Jewish scriptures. Love your enemies, said Jesus. And there's that wonderful passage in the Quran where God says to humanity, we've formed you from a male and a female and have created you into tribes and nations so that you may get to know one another. Not so that you may dominate or convert or conquer or terrorize or exploit, but so that we may gradually get to know one another. And that requires a lot of work. It requires that we don't just accept the stereotypical view or the received view that we've been told since childhood about other peoples or other religious faiths, but we find out and find the common core of humanity. We're all linked together by suffering too. Mm-hmm. Every human being experiences pain, and suffering, that acknowledgement of suffering, realizing that the pain that we see among the people who've suffered from the floods here in Pakistan, the pain we've seen people suffering from earthquake, natural disaster, from terrorism. This is all our pain. We can relate to that, and we must do it. We must see that suffering is not something that simply happens far away, but that it implicates us all, it joins us together.
Do I hear you saying that it is not just information and analysis, but we need transformation?
Yes.
We need a change in our lives.
We do, and that's why my book that I've written is called 12 Steps to a Compassionate Life. And it's about how we can do this step by step, incorporate more and more compassionate ways, disciplines, ways of living into our daily routine, so that it can have a transformative effect. But you have to work at it. God says in the Quran, indeed, God cannot change the state of a people unless they change the state of their own inner selves.
Absolutely.
And that's the responsibility that we have to take responsibility for our own transformation and see that this is reflected in our behavior, as Confucius said, all day and every day.
In these past few years, Karen, we've seen a spate of books coming out, bestsellers by Dawkins and Hitchens and Harris, the whole tribe, you see, on what has been dubbed as the New Atheism by John Hott of Georgetown. Does that in any way pose a kind of threat or a challenge to religion, in your opinion?
I think that the wave of the New Atheism is dying down, at least it is in the UK. We're not hearing so much about these people anymore. The vogue is passing. I think they asked some quite important questions, and I think you have to listen to that carefully, because what they see is a very bowdlerized view of religion, and rather simplistic. They don't know much, but what they know they don't like. And perhaps we always have to think, perhaps we're giving, religious people are giving that bad impression.
Sometimes we don't like it, frankly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we all know that religious people, we all have our intolerances. I wish, however, that
and narrow-mindedness.
Yes, where we close down our sights and we we blame other people for their beliefs. But I wish that they had expressed their critique in a less hateful way. There's a lot of aggression in there and unfairness, and I think that, in a sense, has spoiled their critique.
What solution do they give?
Well, just give it up. They just say, let's get rid of religion. Will
that solve our problem?
Well, it won't, because we're not going to get rid of religion. We human beings have been religious from the very, very beginning. We are, it's been said, homo religiosus, religious beings, because we are beings that need meaning in our lives, and if we don't find it, we fall very easily into despair. We are also beings that have a sense of transcendence. There's always something that eludes us, that holds us in awe and wonder when we look at the universe. And we thought science was going to answer all our problems about the universe. And then Einstein came along, and now we're looking at an indeterminate universe. But Einstein said that contemplating this absolute mystery gives profound joy and wonder and awe. And that is what he said, anybody who has not experienced this awe is as good as dead. That's what we human beings are. We are seeking constant meaning in our lives, and we need to live in relation to a transcendent reality, a reality that goes beyond what we immediately experience, what we can touch and feel and think even. And so that quest will always continue, I think.
Sometimes I can't help thinking that our scholars and academics, we talk too much or we write too much, but we are not listening to our creator.
Yes, listen.
Okay, we can doubt the creator, but, well, that's another story. But we need to listen, don't we?
We need to listen to one another, and that's a good practice for listening to the divine. And I think we're very good at talking, as you say. Our airways are clogged with talk shows and discussions, but not real listening goes on. And sometimes when you see a panel discussion on TV or among politicians,